Hello and welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. My name is Tyler, and today we will talk about our beloved Baltimore Orioles, who are kind of up and down right now. And I think a lot of folks online are starting to get agitated with the prolonged level of mediocrity that the Orioles have hit into in the last month and a half at this point. It's been a prolonged period where the Orioles just haven't been quite as good as they were early on in the season. Luckily for them, pretty much the entire AL is doing the exact same thing. Specifically, I think we're going to get into one person within the Orioles organization that I think is taking a lot of heat right now, get where my thoughts are on the matter, and go from there. But before we do that, I do want to remind everybody of our sponsor for the podcast, and that is Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source of everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. So when the game's over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. And if you head over to the website today to get in on the action, use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Again, that is promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. Thanks to Bet Online for sponsoring the Warehouse Podcast. All right, what I want to talk about today. Brandon Hyde, the Orioles manager, has been the Orioles manager for a long time now, came in with the regime of Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal, which was after the 2018 season, where the Orioles completely fell apart. They sold off the farm and were ready to kind of break things down and build them back up again. And as part of that, Hyde came in along with Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal, like I said, that whole regime, and has been the Orioles manager ever since, has seen the Orioles through some really wretched, but understandably wretched seasons in 2019. Team was compelling in 2020, was in contention for a playoff spot in that weird wonky season where Jose Iglesias was their best player out of nowhere. And now fast forward 4 years, Jose Iglesias is still in the majors, but is also a recording artist, having fun with the Mets over there. That's a cool little story. If we aren't aware of that, he has a top hit single called Oh My God. Check that out. We will not be discussing that any further on this episode, but still a nice little side story. Obviously, the team slumped again in 2021. And then things started to pick up in 2022. Rutschman was up early. Gunnar came up later. The team was above 500. And then last year, 101 wins. And now this season in a position, again, despite all the topsy-turviness, to win over 90 games, to go to the playoffs. And right now they are in position to win the American League East. They're tied atop the AL East as I record this with the Yankees. But again, they've won the head-to-head with the Yankees. They do still have 3 games left this season to determine whether or not they get that official tiebreaker. They just have to win one more of the 3 games against the Yankees to guarantee that. Anyway, all that is to say that Brandon Hyde has seen this team through some low lows where the talent was in the toilet, came to fisticuffs with Chris Davis a little bit in the dugout. We saw that when I think Davis was not playing particularly well at that point, was making a ton of money. And it seems that maybe Hyde wasn't overly enthralled with Davis's habits at that time. Now you fast forward, Hyde has, like I said, shepherded the team through that period. Now that the team finally has competent talent in Baltimore, and Hyde has said as much, the team is now winning games. They won 101 games last year. I think overperformed a little bit, put them on a platform to be really good this year. And the team has, again, this year, in the grand scheme of things, been quite good, despite a big shift in injury luck, which we can talk about that in a second. However, the team has definitely slowed down since early in the season. They were on pace like 106 wins for a long time. They were crushing opponents, and now we kind of hit that period of the season in June when they had one off day in the month of June. Then you had July come, you had the All-Star break. The Orioles went into the All-Star break sluggish. They've come out of the All-Star break not playing great. Gunnar Henderson has gone from an MVP candidate to slightly less than that. I think at this point, Aaron Judge is going to run away with that. Bobby Witt Jr. has potentially even leapfrogged him. Gunner's defense has gotten kind of sloppy, but still Gunner's been a fantastic player. But the Orioles are not running away with the AL East as it feels, some of us feel they should have, given how poor the Yankees have played. As bad as the Orioles have been recently, the Yankees have been even worse. And the Orioles had an opportunity there to really run away with the AL East, and they haven't done so. So I think that, first of all, has gotten some folks, I think, just agitated with the Orioles in general because they see the talent on this team and they say, oh, this team is deep as anything. Like, yes, we've got an MVP candidate in Gunner. We've got a Cy Young candidate in Corbin Burns. We've got a Rookie of the Year candidate in Colton Cowser. I mean, we've got kind of all the pieces. And yes, we knew coming into the season we weren't going to have Felix Bautista. And we knew the health of Kyle Bradish and John Means was iffy, to say, to put the most positive spin on it. This is a team, though, depth-wise, should be running away with the division against a Yankees team that is very top-heavy with Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Garrett Cole. And beyond that, not a whole lot, I think, to write home about. They've improved that a little bit with Jazz Chisholm coming on and Giancarlo Stanton getting healthy. But I think on balance, a lot of folks, particularly locally, believe the Orioles should be running away with the division. They haven't done that. So I think some of that comes around and people say, okay, well, if the team has good talent, we hear all the time that the minor league system is stacked, so we should have even more talent coming. And yes, Mike Elias did not make a big move at the deadline, but he did make a lot of marginal moves that I think we all probably agree made the Orioles a better team, if not in huge leaps and bounds, at least patched up the holes they had to the degree that they could. Because if you look around the league, no team really made that big franchise season altering move. It just didn't happen. Tarek Skubal didn't go anywhere. Garrett Crochet didn't go anywhere. There just wasn't that big move to have. And the Orioles are one of the teams that was, not quiet. They were active, but didn't make their roster, 5 wins better. They kind of just shored up the floor without raising the ceiling at all. So, okay, we made moves to give you more talent, Brandon. We know the depth is there. Why aren't you winning more games consistently? I think that's kind of the context of that. Now, what I think the other context that's helpful there is that the Orioles, who were very fortunate with injuries last season, really the only big injury they had was, Ryan Mountcastle had his vertigo issues in the middle of the season. That's obviously a serious thing. He came back from that, played much better. And then at the end of the season, they did not have Felix Bautista for the last month of the year. And then he wasn't able to get healthy for the postseason. There was that whole thing where he could maybe avoid Tommy John and pitch this season. It didn't sound great as a long-term prognosis, but it was sort of just like, throwing everything against the wall, see what sticks. Ended up, Bautista couldn't pitch, and he's out all of this season as well. This year, I think it's been quite the opposite. In general, the lineup has been healthy until Jordan Westburg has broken his hand this past week. He's expected out till almost the end of the regular season. But that is about the only injury on the offensive side. On the pitching side, it has been pretty much nightmarish. Beyond Corbin Burns, everybody's been hurt. Grayson Rodriguez had a lengthy stint on the IL earlier in the year. He's back on the IL now as I record this, although it does sound like they avoided the worst of that with the lat discomfort. He was going to pitch this week in Toronto. Ended up being that he didn't feel right. You could see people reading his lips. He said he didn't feel right in warmups. His lat was bothering, which was an issue with him in Norfolk a couple years ago that delayed his debut in the majors. People were worried that was going to be the issue now. Sounds like it's relatively mild, but still they put him in the IL immediately, and he's going to miss some time. Dean Kramer, he had a lengthy absence and has not pitched great since coming back. And then, of course, you've got the big losses of Kyle Bradish and John Means to Tommy John surgery. In addition to that, obviously Bautista's still out. Danny Coulombe, who I think you could argue is the Orioles' best reliever without Bautista, he's out with bone spurs or bone chips, I forget which it is, until near the end of the season, which necessitated the Orioles to go shore up the pitching staff at the deadline, which they did. But they went and got Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers. I would argue that maybe Eflin is better than Means potentially. Certainly not better than Bradish. And Rogers is not better than either one of them. Now, they are both better, I think, start to start than right now. This version of Cade Povich, who I think eventually you hope will be better than he is now, but right now has struggled as a rookie. Chase McDermott didn't look fantastic in his one major league start at this point and is now in the IL in the minors. But they've shored up the depth a little bit. However, if you get to the postseason and your postseason rotation is who is currently healthy, it would be Corbin Burns, great. Game one, Zach Eflin, okay. Game two, would have rather him been a 3 or 4. And then Trevor Rogers, Dean Kramer, and now that Rodriguez is hurt, Suarez is back in the picture. It doesn't feel great, but those are the constraints that Brandon Hyde has had to work within. It's a tough thing to figure out, tough thing to navigate. So, fast forward that, given all that context, you get to Tuesday's game in Toronto. The Orioles had come off a series in Cleveland where they lost the first 2, won the second 2. I think that had people feeling a little bit better. Jackson Holliday's back up, playing really well. That has people excited. And I think they wanted to go into Toronto, who they're a bad team that sold off pieces at the deadline. Didn't sell off their biggest pieces. Vlad Guerrero's still there. Bo Bichette's hurt, but he's still there. Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, they're still there. But they did sell off pieces, and they're already in last place. You'd hope, hey, us, the first place Orioles, can go into Toronto and take care of business, and that just didn't really happen. They lost 2 out of 3 to Toronto, but specifically the game one on Tuesday is the game that I think has people has their feathers ruffled a little bit. So specifically the moves that they have a problem with. One is in the 6th inning. This was after Albert Suarez has pitched 5 fantastic innings for the Orioles. I agreed with the decision to pull Albert Suarez after 5 innings. I think it's, there's a whole train of thought nowadays that if the guy's pitching well, I won't say it's a train of thought. There's the analytic mindset that says, okay, when a guy is faced in order 2 times, his performance is going to dip a bunch that 3rd time through the order. So in most cases, let's get that guy out of the game. Unless, there's a big lead going on and you can stand to give up a few runs without really losing your chance at winning the baseball game. Let's get that guy out of the game and bring in a fresh armed reliever to face this order, the top of the order likely, and they can deal with that. And they'll get kind of that first at bat penalty where you struggle typically more in the first time you see a guy versus the second time versus the 3rd time. But then there's sort of the old school mentality, which I think is kind of getting in vogue again, of one of the most fun parts of baseball is seeing like this pitcher become basically a character of the game and fight through and perform throughout an evening versus like only being around for the first half. And then by the time the game rolls around the end of the game rolls around an hour later, you've kind of forgotten who that guy was because a lot of things have happened since then. Some people and a lot of people love, sort of that story arc of a starter starting the game, battling through, getting through tough situations, and if not getting to the end of the game, at least getting farther into the game, that it feels like they're more worthy of that W next to their name than they would be otherwise. In this situation, though, I think most people would agree here, it was perfectly fine to take Albert Suarez out of the game after 5 innings. One, he'd pitched really, really well, and he had done so just days, really, a week maybe after being demoted from a rotation role to a bullpen role. When Eflin and Rogers came into the organization, it was pretty clear that they were going to be, into the rotation alongside Burns, Rodriguez, and Kramer, and the likes of Povich and Suarez we relegated to other roles. Suarez was relegated to a bullpen role. I think he made 1 relief appearance, and then this came up where Rodriguez was uncomfortable prior to the game. Suarez was tapped as the one to come in, and he comes in and does a fantastic job. Throws 73 pitches, so maybe there were more bullets in the chamber there, but throws 73 pitches, goes through 5 innings, allows 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, looked really, really good. And I think you take that after facing an order 2 times and you say, good job, Albert, go hit the showers. We got it from here. They call him Birch Smith from there, who obviously, if we talked about this, at the beginning of the season, we'd say, Birch who? Who is that? Sounds like a tree. It's a pitcher. Okay, you tell me it's a pitcher, I believe you. A guy that's kind of come out of nowhere, took him from the Marlins organization. He's an older pitcher. The Orioles have added velo to his fastball. He's got a tick up on his fastball. Has really become one of Brandon Hyde's more counted on relievers, I think, recently, especially with Coulomb out and Kimbrel hitting his, up and down type of season there. Bring in Burke Smith. He faces 3 hitters, gets 2 of them, allows a single, and then that gets to the point where a left-handed hitter is coming to the plate. Burke Smith does not have good numbers against left-handed hitters. I think they hit like 355 against him with an OPS over 800. So it's understandable that the Orioles don't want Burke Smith to face the left-handed hitter. It was Horwitz, who is a Maryland native, born in Timonium, went to St. Paul's, so that's kind of a fun thing there. But left-handed hitter coming up, they don't want Burke Smith to face him. So look to the bullpen. The 2 lefties in the bullpen for the Baltimore Orioles right now, because Keegan Aiken at the time was demoted to AAA, are Gregory Soto, new Oriole, came at the deadline, and Cionel Perez. Soto's a guy that I think the Orioles are bringing in, hoping as a reclamation project. Throws hard from the left side, has big strikeout numbers, has big walk numbers. But I think the Orioles are hoping, okay, let's get him in here. Let's tweak him a little bit, and he can become something for us that he wasn't anymore for the Philadelphia Phillies. Has been a really good pitcher in his career, but has kind of fell upon hard times in Philadelphia and struggling to find a role in a pretty full bullpen up in Philly. The Orioles go for Gregory Soto, and I think that's kind of the first thing of the night that people get upset about, is going for Soto, who has not been good for the Orioles to this point. I think he'd made 2 or 3 appearances in Orioles uniform. Neither one of them went great, and then this one here was the nightmare performance for Soto. Now, he gives up 4 hits, 4 runs, plus he allows the 1 inherited run from Smith to score, so that run goes against Smith. Walks 1, strikes out 1, and gives up the 1 home run. The 1 home run is really the only ball that got hit super hard. That was against Alejandro Kirk. He smacked that one over 100 miles per hour. There's no mistaking that. A lot of the other balls were hit, 70 to 85 miles per hour down the line, just out of reach of fielders. So there's some bad luck there. But the issue with Soto was he just wasn't missing bats. I think his whiff rate in the game was like 11%, which just isn't going to work. And it's much lower than what his whiff rate has been on the season, around 30%. So I don't know if the Blue Jays were seeing something, or if Soto is tweaking something that is making him less effective right now, but will pay off in the long run. I'm not sure what it was, but whatever the case, he was not very good in this game. And I think that's the first thing people point to, is you're going for Soto, who's struggled. You want a lefty, okay, you got 2 options, Perez or Soto, and you go for Soto, who is not been very good, and it's a close game. And yeah, you could save Perez for later when it is closer, but at that point, the game might not matter anymore. So let's use Perez now while we know it's close, and then we save Soto for, later on. And if it's still close, okay, you take your chances then. But the Orioles could just have easily have been breaking the game wide open at that point. Goes for Soto, it does not go well. That's the first point against him. The second is going to be in the 8th inning, right? So we go to the 8th inning. The Orioles are trailing 5-1, and they've got the middle of the order up. Adley Rutschman walks, Ryan Mountcastle singles, Eloy Jimenez singles. So the Orioles have bases loaded with no outs. That knocks Chris Bassett, the starter, out of the game. Bassett had been really good. The Blue Jays opt for Genesis Cabrera, a left-hander, to come in to face who we think is going to be Jackson Holliday. Now, Jackson Holliday has hit a home run already in this game, has been hitting really well since coming up from AAA. This is going to be awesome. Bases loaded, no outs. Let's see what the kid can do. Except Brandon Hyde doesn't think that way. Instead, he opts for Austin Slater, right-handed hitter that the Orioles just got at the deadline from the Reds, I believe, to come in and pinch hit for Jackson Holliday. Now, the logic here, of course, is lefty-righty. Holliday's a lefty. Slater's a righty. The Orioles have brought him in specifically to face left-handed pitching. And this was something people jumped on in the postgame, is that Brandon Hyde says that Slater's been hitting left-handed pitching really well this season. Now, that's not actually true. Slater has not hit left-handed pitching very well this season. His OPS is under 600 against them, or at least it was at the time of this game. His OPS was under 600 against left-handed pitching this season. However, that could have just been a slip of the tongue by Hyde, because historically Austin Slater does hit left-handed pitching very well. And Austin Slater is not a spring chicken. Austin Slater's been in the league for a long time, had some really good seasons with the San Francisco Giants. So that's based off a lot of time and exposure to left-handed pitching. Austin Slater historically does hit lefties very well. So at least there's some logic there. It's Holliday's a lefty, a rookie with limited experience. Slater's a righty, a veteran who has historically done well against lefties. Okay, and that move actually works out okay. Slater walks. I think people would have liked to seen Holliday get the opportunity to do something. If he hits a grand slam, the Orioles are now tied up. That's huge for him, for the Orioles, for everybody. Opts for Slater. Slater walks, so you can't really complain, I guess, too much about it in the aggregate. However, I think the opposite argument would be you let Holiday hit, even if it doesn't work out. You're probably not doubling up Holiday. He's very fast. The worst thing, you probably get an out, and the lineup moves on to Ramon Urias, who then you could pinch hit for Ramon Urias, who has been good lately. Doesn't have good numbers against lefties, even though the Orioles play him against lefties a lot. Maybe you have Slater pinch hit for Urias. That's not what happened, though. Instead, he does not pinch hit for Urias at all, which I think that in all of these moves, to me, is almost like the most confusing one. Is you've got 3 hitters in a row here. Urias is the weakest hitter of the three, I think. I know he's the most experienced of the three we're going to talk about, but is also the weakest hitter. He's the one he doesn't pinch hit for because, again, he's playing the handedness stuff, righty versus lefty. Urias strikes out. Wasn't a particularly good at bat. Let me look at strikes out on 3 pitches, all a sinker, a fastball, and another fastball, 4-seamers, both of them, all up in the zone. So kind of frustrating there that he does not get pinch hit for. Then coming up to the plate is Colton Cowser, except again, Brandon Hyde doesn't go for Cowser. He's a left-handed hitter. They don't want him to face a left-handed pitcher here. He opts for Kobe Mayo. So again, tough to understand that one. Kobe Mayo doesn't have a hit yet as a major leaguer, has looked a little bit overpowered up there. I'm not so sure you want to put him in a situation where it's 2 outs, bases loaded, you're down, and we really need you to get a hit here, because if we don't get a hit, the game's not over yet. We've got the 9th inning to play, but if we don't score something here, we're probably going to be in a little bit of trouble. And Mayo strikes out as well. And that was on 5 pitches. So ball, strike, foul, ball in the dirt, swinging strike. So he did foul off a ball, but again, it wasn't the most competitive at bat. And Mayo goes down swinging. And again, kind of another hit to a young kid's mentality or ego there a little bit. Mayo struggled a little bit, which is, that's not new for us as Orioles fans. I think we've gotten used to and almost expect these young position players to come up and get knocked around a little bit their first time. And that's part of the growing experience. You go back down to AAA, work on some things, and go from there. But the option or the decision to pinch hit Mayo for Cowser, I know Cowser doesn't have the best numbers against lefties, but I think he's competent. His OPS is above 700 against them this season, and he's been maybe the Orioles' best hitter. I said Jackson Holiday has been, but over the last month, it's Cowser. Cowser has got himself back into the Rookie of the Year conversation, and he's been fantastic defensively, offensively. He's pushed Cedric Mullins to a platoon role at this point. Not even with Cowser, just with somebody else in the outfield. Cowser plays every single day because he's hit so well. So the fact that you pinch hit for him right there feels questionable again. Now, what I'll say also, and this is dominoes falling, butterfly effect, all that stuff. If you look at the starting lineup for the Orioles, again, they're facing a right-handed pitcher in Chris Bassett. They start Eloy Jimenez at DH. That's a right-handed hitter. I think when we got Eloy Jimenez, the expectation from a lot of us is that Jimenez would face left-handed pitching most of the time. His numbers are better against lefties, so that made some sense. Instead, he starts Jimenez against a righty. Now, Jimenez has been very good for the Orioles, so I'm not really going to complain about it, but I just want to kind of point it out as sort of the dominoes that fell here. Jimenez starts at DH. Ryan O'Hearn starts in left field. What they could have done is O'Hearn is the DH. You bring Mullins in to play left, or Mullins in to play center, I guess, and Cowser to play left. You've got Mullins, a left-handed batter, in there. And now you've got a more left-handed heavy lineup to face a right-handed pitcher. And you now have a more right-handed bench to deal with these sorts of issues where a left-handed pitcher comes out against one of your rookies who maybe you don't have as much confidence in that situation. If you get to this point in the game late, then you've got Eloy Jimenez on the bench to hit and Austin Slater on the bench to hit. Maybe you sub in Eloy Jimenez instead of Kobe Mayo, or you are more reticent to swap out Ramon Urias for Eloy Jimenez or something. But I think if you do that, you're not going to put Kobe Mayo in a situation that's very high pressure. And yes, these guys need to get that experience, but in the moment, it probably feels and makes more sense for Eloy Jimenez to take that at bat. But again, that's way down the dominoes there. I think much simpler is, should Kobe Mayo have pinch hit for Cowser at all? And I think my answer is probably no. And of course, hindsight is easy to say that. But even in the moment, it felt kind of like, oh, Cowser's really been playing well. Like, yeah, he doesn't have any hits today, but I trust him more than Kobe Mayo right now, even with the lefty righty stuff. So that felt kind of tough. So those are the things that have people pretty upset with Brandon Hyde at the moment is the Gregory Soto decision and then pinch hitting for both Holiday and Cowser in a very crucial part of the game where it feels like they are two of your best hitters right now when, Gunnar hasn't had as much power lately. Adley's been kind of slumping a little bit. It does feel like Holiday and Cowser you need to lean on a little bit more rather than protect them so much because, again, you're not even protecting rookies because you then put a rookie in Kobe Mayo for that situation. So it really comes down to just lefty righty stuff. And for me, I get that argument. I would get that argument more if it was a month from now and Kobe Mayo has, you know, positioned himself as a competent, established, to some degree, major league player that at least has a dozen hits under his belt or something. And right now we're not there. He's still kind of searching a little bit, and that's okay. But you don't have to exasperate that issue by putting him in a situation that's really tough on him. It was a bad game of decisions, but what I'll say is let's not make a mountain out of a molehill here. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this is a constant with Hyde. He overmanages. He does the lefty righty stuff too much. He doesn't pull the right trigger in the bullpen." Look, the bullpen's a bit of a mess right now. It's not that the bullpen's bad, but they're still figuring it out. Craig Kimbrell is not Felix Bautista. And so when he's not working, when he's not going well and they want to avoid him in the ninth inning, they got to redo things a little bit. And that means putting people in positions that maybe they didn't want to put them in. And that's kind of where they're at right now. I think Kimbrell's getting back to where they feel confident in him in the ninth inning, but it seems like they're going to have to do this every month or two where he has a bad weekend or whatever. And it just didn't work. I wouldn't have gone to Soto first. I would have gone to Perez if you wanted to go lefty lefty. I think in the moment I was thinking go Jacob Webb. He is a righty but has really good splits against left-handed pitching. We found out the next day he needed to go on the IL for something, so that wasn't an option. So really it was Soto or Perez. He went Soto. I would have gone Perez. It didn't work out, but that's baseball. The pinch hitting stuff is a little bit more infuriating because, like I said, Holiday and Cowser have been so good. Kind of, I would love to see them get those opportunities versus Slater, who it worked out, but you could have maybe let Holiday hit and then use Slater for Mayo or something, or for Cowser. I don't know. They could have done a different way. I just would have liked to see the young guys hit, so that's a little bit frustrating. But what I will pump the brakes on is, people the fire Hyde you know, core or part of the Orioles fan base is, I think, a little bit ridiculous. It comes down to what does a manager do day to day, and I don't think that Brandon Hyde is sitting in the dugout making these decisions in a vacuum. He's not going, oh, like let me rub my beard here. You know what I think we should do? I just got a gut feeling that Austin Slater is the guy to come in here and do a job instead of our number one all-world prospect, Jackson Holiday, who's been on fire for this last week since we called him up. Yeah, I'm going to push the Austin Slater button. Like, no, there are discussions that happen with the front office where they probably say, hey, if player X is up in this type of a situation, we would prefer if player Y got his at bat. So I'm sure there's a spreadsheet they've got that says Jackson Holiday, based on his minor league data, he hits right-handed pitching, or left-handed pitching X% worse than he does right-handed pitching. So if there's an opportunity, a big run scoring opportunity where he's going to face a left-handed pitcher, we think that Austin Slater would be a 25% better option in that situation than Jackson Holiday would. And I'm sure Hyde has these notes on an iPad or wherever. And for him, when these big moments come up, he can say, all right, let's make the switch and increase our chances, at least in the computer, of winning this baseball game. Same goes for Soto. Same goes for any other pitching, decisions or roster decisions. So then people ask, what is the point of a major manager then if that's how they do things? I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think it's about, personality management and man management of keeping people happy in the dugout and in the clubhouse and keeping things light and keeping things fun, making sure it's an environment that these players want to come to work at every single day and not necessarily be walking on eggshells. We've seen Brandon Hyde, go after umpires, go after opposing teams, protect his guys. I think that's the kind of manager that the Baltimore Orioles want in the dugout day after day. And so that's what they get. And look, the results are the results. The Orioles were really bad for a long time with really bad talent. They have really good talent now and they win a lot of games. And, we've seen enough data historically to say like things like um, lineup organization or whatever doesn't really matter. You could have your best hitter hit ninth and your worst hitter hit first. And yeah, you're probably going to score fewer runs and maybe win a little bit less games. But in general, it's all going to shake out to be that if your talent is good enough, you're going to win a lot of games regardless. Um, so I think that the manager's impact on that isn't exactly as big as some people want to pretend that it is. And if you want to, look at it a different way, I thought I pulled up, the standings here. I mean, a very simple way to look at it is look at the Orioles win-loss record and look at their expected win-loss record. And this is basically just a product of run differential. Higher run differential, you're going to have a better win-loss or expected win-loss record. Lower run differential, you're going to have a worse expected win-loss. But the Orioles' expected win-loss based on their run differential is 67 and 49, and they've actually won 68 games and lost 48 times. So where does that extra win come from? Probably one of these little decisions, right? He probably made a pinch hit decision somewhere, or made a good bullpen decision where the Orioles win a game by 1 run, or they get a hit in a situation where the computer didn't expect them to get hit or something like that, and they win a game that they probably shouldn't have. And that's an accumulation of a couple of those sorts of wins. And then yeah, on the opposite side, you're probably going to get blown out occasionally, and that's usually a product of a really bad start from your pitcher or a really bad game from your offense. And again, that's an oddity of baseball. And if you look at other teams here, look at the Yankees. They have an expected win-loss of 69 and 47. They've won 68 games and lost 48. So they've won one fewer game than they're expected to. Look down at Boston. That's Alex Cora. People think he's like the best manager in the game. He just got an extension from the Red Sox. He's got the Red Sox at 61 and 52. Now this has been a good managing job. I think the Red Sox came into the season not expected to be as good as they have been. Their expected win-loss is 60 and 53, so he's won one more game than his run differential would indicate. A lot of the Red Sox success has come from their pitching staff being a lot better than they were supposed to, specifically their starting staff. I don't know how much say a manager has in how good the starting pitching gets. I venture to guess not a whole lot. Um, I just think people get a little bit wrapped around the axle about the kind of stuff and what impact the manager has day to day. I think in general, if a manager is keeping his players happy, you're not seeing outbursts in the dugout, which you don't with the Orioles. You're not hearing negative comments in the press from the players, which you're not with the Orioles. And the team's winning games in general, which the Orioles are. Yes, they're not winning as many as I think people would hope they would, but the Orioles are winning games. They are currently tied as the best team in the American League. Well, I guess behind the Cleveland Guardians, who have a slightly better winning percentage, but have won one less game. The Orioles are right there, and injuries have been a problem, and despite that, the Orioles are still going to win 90 plus games. They're going to get in the playoffs, and we're going to see from there. And then you really see the merit of a manager's in-game decisions and how fast they could pull the trigger. Again, that's going to be based on some computer modeling. And look, this is boring stuff. This is not stuff that people want to hear. They want to hear that managers are big difference makers that are, old school types, the Connie Mack types, the Earl Weaver types that, pump their teams up and make the big calls and all that stuff. And I'm sure that there's managers that go rogue sometimes, but if they go rogue and those decisions don't work out, you're going to hear about it. They're going to hear about it, and they're going to have to defend themselves. And how do you defend yourself if you say, well, all the numbers on the sheets you guys gave me told me that the move I was going to make didn't make any sense, but I made it anyway, and it didn't work out. I mean, you can't really defend it. So you can understand from Brandon Hyde's perspective why he makes the moves he makes, and sometimes they're not going to work. I think grand scheme, he's been a really good manager for the Orioles. We've heard historically from players like Trey Mancini and John Means say that he makes the environment really positive for the Orioles. He drives the players to get better. I remember John Means specifically saying something about that. Mancini saying that everybody likes playing for him. These are guys who have good reputations of being kind of good soldiers. Mancini is maybe the most positive person that's ever played for the Orioles. So I'm not saying you'd expect him to say a terse word about him, but the fact that he said a good thing versus nothing at all, I think paints part of the picture anyway. So is Brandon Hyde under fire? I think he's under fire the same way that any manager in Major League Baseball is. This is a results based business. They need to win games. they need to make the most of their opportunities. And I think really for the Orioles, the rubber's going to meet the road in the playoffs. The Orioles, they're, barring a humongous collapse, knock on wood, they're going to the playoffs. It'll be on them to go farther in the playoffs than they did in 2024. So if they go in as a wild card, that means they need to win a series and then win a game in the ALDS. If they go in as a division winner, or I guess as a top 2 division winner, they will need to, again, just win a game in the ALDS. So the bar here is not humongous, but I think I would just like to see progress. And for the Orioles, I don't really care about the regular season win total because that's not what matters. The playoffs are what matters. And that hasn't really changed my opinion on Brandon Hyde. So again, it was a bad game on Tuesday. I didn't agree with the decisions, but I'm not going to get up in arms about it. Because it's just too simple. That's too simple of a thing to get upset about, when the bigger issue I think for the Baltimore Orioles this season is that they don't have the pitching depth that they thought they did because injuries have just destroyed it. And it's hard to win baseball games when you have your offense has to be on 4 nights out of 5, which is how it felt. I'd say 3 nights out of 5. Grace Rodriguez is usually pretty good. When your offense has to be on 3 nights out of 5, which is what the reality has been since the middle of June, you're going to win less games. So it's just tough. And I'm not going to put all that on Brandon Hyde. All right, that's all I got for this episode. Just wanted to talk about that pretty in depth. Let me know what your thoughts are in the YouTube video or via email or via social media. If you go to YouTube, just search the Warehouse Podcast, will pop up. I believe there are 285 subscribers right now. Would love to get that to 300 by the end of the season. So if you are liking what you see and hear, go to YouTube, give us a subscription. It's absolutely free. And also like the video so we can reach more folks, and then comment in the comment section about what your thoughts are on Brandon Hyde. Should he be fired? Should he be under the gun? Let us know. We are on X at the Warehouse Pod. Eli really covers things there. We've got almost 800 followers there. We're at 793. Can you get us to 800? If you're not following us, please head over there, hit the follow button. Again, absolutely free, and you can get kind of those unfiltered thoughts from Eli as the games are going on. And of course, subscribe to the podcast. We are part of the Believe Podcast Network, but that doesn't mean we're just on the Believe website. We're also on Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google, if that's still a thing. Go wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be there. Search the Warehouse Podcast or search Orioles Podcast. We're probably one of the top handful. So give us a follow, subscription there, and rate the podcast 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever it is. Give us the best possible rating so we can reach more Orioles fans. But that is all I've got. Thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to the Warehouse Podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. Again, thanks to our sponsor, Bet Online. My name is Tyler, and we will talk to you next time.